Hey everybody, this is Dame with MMORPG.com and GameSpace.com, and I am joined by my good friend Matt. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, buddy. I'm excited to dive into our topic today, actually. So
We are going to talk today about Destiny 2 Forsaken. We both reviewed this game for MMORPG and GameSpace respectively. And what you guys may not know behind the scenes is that Matt and I are real life friends, have known each other for over a decade and some change.
Almost two, actually.
And have gamed, almost 2 decades, and have gamed together for that entire time. Well, not 2 decades worth of playing games, that entire time, but whatever the case is. To the topic at hand, we're going to talk a little bit about Destiny 2 Forsaken, our experiences together with that, our experiences individually, and let's just go ahead and dive in, shall we?
I think that's a great idea, buddy.
All right, let's talk about Gambit, because you were pretty excited about Gambit.
Yeah, arguably when it was first announced, as soon as they said PvP, I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm out.
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm not doing this. I'm not a PvP player. I am old and slow, and my reflexes are terrible now. I used to be awesome, and I'm totally bragging on myself, but I'm fine with that.
I can attest to that.
Right? Back in the old Halo 1 and Halo 2 days, I actually used to be decent at PvP. But but for the purpose of the review, I wanted to try to get through as much of the content as I could. So I did dive into Gambit, and lo and behold, I absolutely loved Gambit. It is this beautiful balance of PvE and PvP, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. Just with the elements of being able to troll each other without necessarily being in the same area as each other, that was great. Having that rogue element kind of jump into your arena was a lot of fun. Just overall, I thought it was a really cool experience. But that was my quick take on it.
I was gonna say, I think that for me too, that was the thing that made PvP a little bit more palatable. I actually don't mind the Crucible so much. It's not something that's my go-to of I'm excited about entering Lord Shax's arena, but at the same time, I do okay. And so hey, 1 to 3 games, get my powerful engram, and I am good to go. I can slog through that. I can slog through that if there's a carrot on the other end. But Gambit is a little bit of a different animal, and I would absolutely love to get a team of people together that we're all communicating, we're all working out strategy and stuff like that, because really, strategy in Gambit is probably one of the most underrated things I shouldn't say underrated, I'm sorry. It's one of those things that as you're pugging that, you're missing that element of Gambit. And when I got a chance to go out to Bungie to preview Forsaken and play it with a group of people, one of the things that we noticed is both of the groups that were competing against each other were both in the same area, and so you'd have one team that kind of huddled and talked about their strengths, talked about their weaknesses, and the other team just didn't. And and it was pretty apparent at the end of that match that was the second game that we played. I'm sorry. First match, one team just dominated. Second match, or second game, the team that had gotten stomped in the first game had gotten together, talked, said, okay, this person is good at shooting, this person not so good. Why don't we send the person that hasn't been so great to go collect motes and they're our banker? And boy, I'll tell you what, if it did not turn the tide. And so it's Gambit is one of those play modes that even if you're not top tier PvPer, it really is a good it's a good strategic game where you can get a little bit of that competition in there. There is that rogue element of invaders, and it's a blast.
Oh, I agree.
It's made PvP a lot more palatable for me.
No, I agree, and I want to echo that. Actually, in my review, I echoed that very sentiment of this idea that Gambit doesn't just reward skillful shooters, right? Like guys that have those awesome twitch reflexes. I would argue that a team with solid strategy can beat a team of good shooters every time. Because that, I mean, that ability to drop, you drop those motes down, and then you control the other team by dropping, essentially summoning baddies that lock down their bank. Man, you can really leverage that. And actually, I played one match where that was exactly what the other team did to us. We spent our entire time just trying to mow down the guys that were guarding our bank. Like, we just could not get through them because they kept popping up. Yeah, the blockers. Like, we could not get through them fast enough. So it's interesting. I'll be curious to see how that plays out. I would actually think that would be a really cool esports event myself.
Absolutely.
Because there's just so many more elements to it than a standard, even like a battle royale or any of those types of things. Like there's just so much more going on. So many more strategies that you can engage with. But anyway, that's kind of Gambit mode, I think. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on that?
Yeah, one more thing that I just wanted to mention there is you were talking about the strategy and stuff like that. I feel like Gambit brings some elements of like MOBAs into the FPS arena, which is really funny considering that Destiny itself is like an FPS meets MMO.
That's true.
sort of game. So to add these MOBA elements of like, well, I've watched like top tier Heroes of the Storm competitions where people like hold off on turning in objectives and stuff like that until they can stack these different things to these different blockers or different bonuses or buffs to that right time to get to lock their enemy down. And I think that Gambit is a good arena for that, and it's a really welcome addition to Destiny 2. So speaking of welcome additions to Destiny 2, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the probably one of the most, I don't know if this was unexpected that they would add this in, but I think that it's definitely a welcome thing. When you have an entire arsenal of rocket launchers and assault rifles and whatnot to go to, the bow.
Right?
The bow seemed like a really unlikely go-to for a new weapon, but I have loved my experience with it.
I agree. I found it's funny, again, talking about our reviews, I mentioned that in the review that like in a world that is just just equipped with weapons that essentially shoot chain lightning and guns that blow up everything, to be given a compound bow, it's like that seems a little weird. But
it would seem a little silly, yes.
Yeah, but man,
but it's effective.
It is so effective, and landing those headshots with that thing, probably one of the most satisfying experiences of my life.
So I have historically been a hand cannon guy. I love the hand cannon. Sunshot is my go-to, but I'll tell you, the bow is kind of one of those weapons that if I've got one, I'm going to use it,
right?
Because there's something that's very satisfying about that.
That's true.
I had a really good experience, or really memorable experience, and we can move on to strikes. We'll talk about weapon changes here in just a minute, but with strikes, playing through Warden of Nothing, which is probably one of my favorite strikes in all of Destiny.
Agreed.
And there's that part at the very beginning where you're running through the tram system and you can get up on top of the rails, and so I found myself, my fire team had gone around one side. I found myself up on top of the rails, and they're just getting into combat and they're pinned down, and I'm up on the rails just picking stuff off left and right. It was awesome. And here I am, drop in like all Hunter style, and ping ping dropping guys. Was so good. It's so good.
Agreed.
So satisfying. What do you think of the new strikes, Matt?
I have absolutely loved the experience. I feel like they've put a lot more thought into the strikes. Like, they don't feel quite as like straight line, linear, progression, move through it in this one direction, do this one thing. Like, well, I mean, and Warden of Nothing is a great example of that. Like, yes, there is kind of this one direction you're trying to get to, but there's so many different ways.
Path.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to go about it, and I really like that because it does dramatically change the engagement the way you choose to do it. Like on that same map in that same area you're talking, where you went up on top of the rails, I grabbed one of the vehicles that were there and just basically started mowing everything down. Like I took a totally
Nice.
different approach to that, which is typically how we play video games anyway.
Well,
Reflection
yeah.
of that. You go for precision. I just blow stuff up.
Yes.
So I liked that about these new maps is that it allowed it really, you could see the thought and care and time that was put into how these were built. And they were really trying to kind of push the boundaries of what they had done previously with strikes. And I really like that. Some of the engagements were different. Some of the boss fights were kind of different, which was nice. And there was some cool, just a cool mix of elements there that I would say, again, not that these things were lacking before, but that this really just kind of pushed the boundaries on what to expect from a strike.
Well, what it really did is it showcased something really smart that Bungie did, and that was that they partnered with High Moon Studios to work on things like strikes and Lost Sectors. Lost Sectors also are another one too, where they're more than just go in, find the big bad, kill the big bad, get the chest.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. Did you find the dance party in the Tangled Shore?
I don't know that I did, to be honest with
Oh,
you.
there's totally a club up in the Tangled Shore.
Yes, I did. Sorry, yes, I did. Now that we're talking about this, yes, I do remember the dance club. Yeah, that was so random. That was
Yeah,
random to come
it was
across.
so funny. I had been talking with a couple of people. Actually, I think it was CJ from IGN during one of the breaks, and it was Chandler from. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be dropping names here. Chandler from PlayStation Nation, CJ from IGN. We were talking about just some of the music and stuff like that, and he had asked, Chandler had asked something along the lines of, I wonder how much of a cut that Paul McCartney got for his whole deal, and then we walk in and it's like the Paul McCartney Destiny song and the dance remix to that, and it's hilarious to walk into that stuff. But yeah, I think that a lot of what we're seeing with strikes, a lot of what we're seeing with not just the narrative direction but the design as well. We're seeing that partnership with High Moon, who if you've never played a High Moon Studio games, they did a couple of the Transformers games, as well as I believe they did the Deadpool game too. And I'm gonna have to fact check myself on that. But anyway, they were a really, really good partner for Bungie within that, and just did a fantastic job with that. And so anyway, I mean, I love the strikes. I love what they've done with them. I love what they've done with Lost Sectors. There are so many things that I could talk for hours about.
One thing I just want to talking about the dance party again. I want to come back to that real quick because it ties into something that I feel was fleshed out really well in this expansion as well, and that's this idea that I feel like this is the first time in Destiny where like when engaging with all of these other races and stuff, it's the first time I felt like they're more than just enemies. Like it's interesting.
Yes.
Like there was this the way they were presented in this expansion was this idea that they are all trying to survive in this universe.
Yes.
And yes, their end goals may be dramatically different than ours, but they're a species trying to thrive and survive in this universe. And this is the first time I've ever really kind of been engaged that way with the story, or even with some of these other, like the dance party and the and stuff like that. But it really was the first time I've ever felt like it's been presented that way, where they're not just the big bads, but there's more to this than that.
I think that was one of the things that I really loved about the Spider.
Yes,
as a character.
Exactly. The Spider was great for that. Like just bringing a humanity to this whole race, so to speak.
Well, and what's funny about him is that he's so outside of the normal structure for the fallen houses. Like he has no connection to any Kel. He has no need for any house. He has no love for Kells or for their tech worship or anything like that. He's just like, he's a dude that has his own angle.
That's true.
And it's actually really interesting if you read some of the lore cards for for like the right side of wrong. It's a pulse rifle.
Yeah,
and
I still have a
and
couple of those actually. So
I love that. Like that's the gun that made me like pulse rifles. So I think I had a Jade Rabbit that was okay, but I really, really, really like the right side of wrong. But anyway, if you read through some of that and then through some of the armor sets, there's a story that you kind of get about Spider and a shipment of stuff, and you find out that this is a dude that really loves art. He's an art collector,
right?
But anyway, so like they bring these. They've done a really, really good job. Even with so this is something that I pointed out in my review that is something that I really love about Forsaken, and they nailed this pitch perfectly. So one of the things that a bunch of people have said is that Forsaken really feels like the Taken King of Destiny 2. If you remember back with Destiny 1, the first major content update outside of House of Wolves and Dark Below was the Taken King. And you added a new area, you added new supers, and just a revisioning of what Destiny could be. Well, it echoes that in Forsaken, not just in the changes to things like the director and things like new strikes or new supers and stuff like that. It also echoes that like story. There's a really poetic connection story-wise too, because in Taken King, that's where we see the death of Marasov. That's where we see what we think is the death of Uldren, and what is actually a moment that really spirals him into the place that we catch up with him in Forsaken. And then you see like even Cade's death. Even Cade's death, when you look at it in the grand scheme of the story of Destiny 2 Forsaken, well, it is the thing that fuels our anger to pursue Uldren. I mean, Cade's death really is collateral damage. Like it could have been Joe Nobody in that same position, and it would have been the same thing. Like I don't think that he was purposefully lured there for that moment. He was just wrong place at the right time. And so anyway, the funny thing, or not funny but ironic thing about that is that Mara's death in Taken King was almost seen as, at least from the community, was almost seen as like it was kind of an afterthought. She was kind of a secondary character. We didn't think it was going to have any big ripples. Like we didn't go into like taking on Oryx because he took down Marasov. No, we took down Oryx because he needed to be taken down.
He was the bad guy.
Because he was the bad guy. But so there are a lot of these really interesting poetic connections between Forsaken and Taken King, but I could talk about that forever because I'm a lore nerd.
That's
and
right.
I love it.
I
absolutely love this stuff. So let's go ahead and let's actually dive into one element of story stuff that you and I kind of disagree on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's post story progression. So Matt, why don't you kind of lay out your case on what you felt was lacking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Post story progression.
So just to be clear, like I still rated this expansion like I think I give it a 9 out of 10 because it was awesome. Like this whole expansion as a whole. Now, arguably, I haven't played the raid yet, but I've heard nothing but awesome things about it. So I'm excited to get into that when we finally get a group together. But one of my biggest critiques was this post story progression. And I get that. I mean, I've been playing MMOs forever, so I get that when you kind of get through the main story arc, you're kind of in grind mode. I mean, my favorite genre is ARPGs. I get grind. Like I understand it. Yeah, exactly. But what was so rough for me in this and so jarring was just how smooth and well paced the story was. Because it was. I would think that I honestly think this is one of the best kind of from a pacing standpoint storytelling they've ever done. And even level progression and item level progression, like it was very smooth, very well done. But then, like as soon as that story is done, it felt like I hit a wall with progression. Like it just feel like I slammed into a wall where it was like, oh, by the way, you now have to grind out. You know what took you maybe 10 hours or 12 hours to grind out 170 item levels and X number of what was it, 20 actual levels, I think. You know, now you're going to spend double that time to move 40 item levels, right, to get ready for raid. And it just felt so jarring to me to kind of like go from this smooth kind of, this is good, this is fun, the pacing feels great, to like, boom, here's the wall. Welcome to the grind. Here's your list of to-dos. You know, and I will say, like, the new director is a lot better than because that was one of the things they changed with Forsaken 2. They really cleaned up the director, I felt, which I liked.
Did.
But at the same time, I still felt like, am I missing something here, or is it really just going to be this slow of a grind? And that was probably my biggest struggle with it. I think, at least that's my experience. Now, arguably too, I don't pay attention very well. I'm very ADD, so I may have just straight up missed something too, which is entirely possible.
This is what happens when I leave you to your own devices.
Truth, man. This is why we play co-op together.
It is. It is. So for me, and I will agree with you from the standpoint of that the pacing of progression is slow. I don't know that I necessarily mind that as long as I feel like I am making some type of progress or making some type of forward motion.
Yeah.
Now, in our conversation pre-recording, you had mentioned that you just felt like you hit a wall and there just really was virtually nothing for you. Now, 500 power level is the soft cap. Once you hit 50, that's kind of where things things settle out.
Yeah.
However, going back to the new director, that's where you see opportunities to get powerful engrams from different places and from different activities. Now, what they don't tell you, and what they really could do a better job at telling you, is that all powerful engrams are not created equally. The powerful engrams that you will get from doing a, say, daily strike or daily crucible are going to be far different than the powerful engrams that you get for completing a weekly story mission or weekly challenge through, like, Ikora has a weekly challenge this week where it's complete 20 bounties for anyone.
Yeah.
It's indiscriminate, like, play how you want to play, which is one of the things that I love, is that it's choose your own adventure, and while you're doing that, do some bounties and we'll reward you for that. So I do really like that. So I really like that aspect of choose your own adventure, because you can pick up bounties along the way and mow them down as you're doing that. So things like Ikora's weekly challenge is good. So, but their engram that you get from them is going to be far different than the engram that you get from doing some of the more daily things.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, like, pacing wise, well, let me just throw this in there too. You also have, once you reach 50, you have what's called Prime Attunement, which increases your chance to get what are called Prime Engrams, which those things are the ones that are going to jump you in power level. Pretty significantly. Now, those are always kind of a crapshoot. Are you going to end up with your 27th Edge Transit or not? But that's another story.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could just gripe about that for 20 minutes, so we won't.
Well, I mean, the good news with Edge Transit is that you will end up with a god roll on that somewhere along the lines, and have an Edge Transit to be able to buff that thing. I really do like that upgrade system, where you are able to upgrade stuff for a price, but you can't upgrade everything willy-nilly without having to take into consideration where you're spending your resources.
Agreed. Yeah.
I do think that was a really smart move for transitioning from one expansion to the other, because otherwise, I know that I found myself doing this entirely over the course of year one. Was I would have a set of gear that I really liked. That set of gear, I really liked the aesthetic of it. And so I just carried it through all of the through the content, through Osiris, through Warmind, and while they had some other great armor sets from there, I mean, it just wasn't my new Monarchy set. So
that's fair. Well, arguably the new Monarchy set was just awesome anyway. But that's just
I loved it. I loved it.
Set. All right, so just as kind of we wrap up kind of this talk on this, can you give us a few pointers, especially for me, maybe more than people listening, because people actually read stuff on the internet. You know, if I have finished story, what are the best ways to move towards getting ready for raid? Like, give me a couple tips, pro tips here.
Okay, I will give you amateur tips or novice tips because I'm not raid ready myself. So, you know, real life stuff. Anyway, so what I would tell you, the first thing you want to do once you complete the story is make sure you go back and talk with Petra, and make sure that you talk with the Spider, because they will send you on a series of missions post story, and that will help you unlock the Dreaming City. The Dreaming City is a whole new area with new bounties. It's gorgeous, and the thing that I love about it is that with the raid being completed, with the world first raid completion, things within that world are changing.
Which is a great thing. Like, I love that they added that in there. Sorry.
So good. Good. So I would say unlock the Dreaming City. That is the first thing that you need to do. The second thing is pay attention to the director. Not
actually read.
Yes, actually read, because you'll see where there are opportunities for you to get engrams that have the potential to give you meaningful upgrades. Also, make sure you talk to Master Raoul once you hit 50, because he will then do the whole give you the prime attunement buff thing. And pay attention to your mailbox. The second that you get a prime engram, you go to the tower and you decrypt the crap out of that thing, because that's going to boost your power level, which is going to boost any other buffs or any other engrams that you're going to get, powerful engrams that you're going to get from that point forward. So you want to make sure that you do those things in succession, and I would argue too that you want to make sure that that the challenges that you do prime engrams, do challenges, and then do your other powerful engram dailies and weeklies. So cool. those would be the things that I would tell you. Other than that, enjoy, and I guess the last thing is just enjoy the experience.
Truth.
Destiny 2 Forsaken and Destiny as a whole is not a game of just rushing. It's a game. There's a lot of layers to things. Get to know the lore. Get to know what's going on in the game. The reason behind why you're doing the things that you're doing in it. So we have gone really super longer than we had intended with this, but we hope that something within here in this conversation was meaningful to you. For all of your MMO and video game news and reviews, that counts everything from actual software and MMOs and video games to hardware. Make sure that you tune into MMORPG.com and GameSpace.com. My name is Dame, and this is my buddy Matt, and we'll see you next time.